Hello everyone, my name is Peter Rimming. Thank you for choosing to join us in this reInvent session. We'll be looking at how to modernize your on-premises backup strategy with AWS and AWS Storage. My name is Peter Rimming and I'm a product manager here on S3, but I've actually been in the backup industry for over 25 years. I'm really excited to share some of that experience with you here today on how to take this journey together, again, to modernize your backup strategy with AWS. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, our agenda today, we're going to be focusing on some of our business goals for backup and some of the challenges you may be having to meet those goals, and how AWS can help modernize your on-premise backup strategy to meet some of those challenges, and then some of the key decisions you'll have to make and questions that you want to ask when determining how to modernize and begin your journey on modernizing your backup strategy. We also want to look at our expected outcomes and the benefits of modernizing with AWS. So what are your modernization goals when you look at your on-premises backup capabilities today? With AWS, you have several options, and we'll be looking at two of them and kind of transitioning back and forth a little bit. But when we look at modernizing backup with AWS, it falls into two kind of main categories of modernizing backup to the cloud and then modernizing backup in the cloud. So when we look at modernizing backup to AWS, you'll be using your existing backup application most likely, and we'll talk about different strategies and options that you'll have on how to make minimal changes with your backup application to go ahead and then move that data directly to the cloud, or perhaps through a gateway device to help translate that on-premise backup directly into cloud storage. Now, on the right-hand side, we'll be looking a little bit at AWS Backup, which can help provide the ability for organizations that have cloud-native applications such as EC2, EBS, EFS, RDS, Aurora, and DynamoDB that are looking for protection across those services, where you have a policy and tag-based backup solution from AWS Backup that's going to provide you the automated backup scheduling, the centralized backup activity, the monitoring, and the logging of all of those backups, as well as the backup encryption, the backup access policies for who should be able to access that data, and then the automated backup retention management of those backups. So those are two different ways that we can look at how to modernize your on-premises backup strategy, again, to the cloud or in the cloud. We're going to be looking primarily at to the cloud, but we also will be covering just a slight bit on how to centralize those backup across AWS services with AWS Backup. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, when we look at our 5 customer on-premises backup challenges today, they really fall into these main categories of too much data. The backup data is growing and growing and growing, and you have to have a place to put that data and logically store that. You're going to have to manage that infrastructure to store those backups. Now, that infrastructure itself, it may come to a point where it's become too vulnerable, where those backups are no longer secure from today's modern cyber attacks and unauthorized deletions. And this is something that we are seeing almost daily with regard to a lot of the backup infrastructure that's out there. This is something where we also want to consider how fragile or how durable our backups are. Are they durable? Are they available? And are they recoverable across sites and across regions? And what does it take to actually raise that level of durability and availability without having to add additional hardware? And that brings us then to our cost factors. Is your backup storage becoming too expensive today, where you're having to build out large on-premise backup appliances and backup storage arrays? Is that becoming manageable or less manageable? Is it too expensive for you to maintain that growing sort of fleet of backup appliances that you need to keep up with your backup storage growth? How many physical backup appliances do you need to back up to and then replicate to in a different region to provide those higher levels of availability and durability? And as those fleets of backup appliances grow, how complicated is that going to become to manage? We are having to set up these devices, procure them, maintain them, upgrade them, patch them, and then obviously upgrade them and lifecycle them as they reach the end of their serviceable lives. These are all key challenges that we hear from customers today pretty frequently. Customers like you that are looking to then have a new modernization journey to something different, something that takes them closer to the cloud or directly to the cloud. So let's go ahead and take a look at how they compare side to side. when we look at our on-premises backup storage that you might have today, and likely do if you're listening to this session. So when we look at how that is set up today with your traditional backup appliances, you're having to procure those, you're having to set those up, manage, and monitor for storage growth. You pay for that capacity up front, and you have really no ability to scale up or scale down as your backup storage needs change. Perhaps you're backing up more data and retaining it for longer due to requirements that you're getting from your legal teams or other departments, or you're a regulated customer where you're having to meet federal regulations or governmental regulations, whether those are local, state, federal government around the world. When we look at then setting up those backup storage infrastructures, how durable and how available is that data? Are you having to settle for less than 11 nines of data durability with those backup storage appliances today? And if that is not acceptable, how many backup storage appliances are you having to add to increase the levels of durability and availability and resiliency of your backup data? And then as that fleet grows, how long are you having to spend each day in managing the daily maintenance tasks to keep those backup storage appliances alive and well and healthy and updated and patched and replicating? That's a lot of effort, and that may be something that you're looking to change on your journey here today to move from an on-premises backup storage solution to a cloud-based one. And when we look at then how you would do that, you're having to look at then those multiple appliances with really no availability or redundancy, and certainly no provided SLAs. So as we compare that then to AWS storage, these are things that you do not have to essentially deal with any longer. You're not paying for fixed storage costs up front. You're paying as you go, and you're paying only for what you use, whether that's moving data out of the cloud, the storage itself, or replicating or data movement to a different region. So these are all challenges that essentially go away when you look at something like AWS storage options for your backup data. You don't have to worry about running out of space any longer. You're not having to worry about managing the storage growth. You're not having to add disk into an existing shelf or add more shelves of disks to a backup appliance. You're not having to upgrade the head unit or the controller of those appliances any longer. You're also not having to settle for anything less than 11 nines of durability of your data. When you send those backups to AWS, this is something that we take very seriously and have built out our storage services to provide that higher level of data durability and availability. We'll spend a lot of time talking about that in this session. And obviously, when it's AWS storage, this is storage that you're not having to manage, not having to procure and wait weeks for it to become available. You're essentially dealing with almost limitless scale that you don't have to manage any of the maintenance, the upgrades, the patching, the lifecycle management of upgrading the controllers or the CPUs or the disks. This is all done for you by AWS. And as you add backup data, you never have to settle for really less than 99.99% of data availability, or even down to 99.5% if you're looking at one of our one zone and frequent access storage classes that we'll talk about here in a moment. But it's very difficult for traditional backup appliances to match these numbers for data availability, durability, and resiliency. And so this is what we'll be focusing on here today for your journey to modernizing your on-premises backup infrastructure. So now when we look at this, there's several options for how to take that data that you have today that might be sitting on physical tape libraries, it might be on deduplicating storage appliances, it might be on existing storage arrays that you're using as a backup device or a NAS device. Now when we look at moving that data and modernizing your backup infrastructure that you have on premises today, you have several options from AWS, and that includes Amazon S3 and S3 Glacier. And that can be really for any backup target of any type. It's sort of a catch-all. And that's something that we're very proud about and happy about to present S3 that way, because it is so flexible for any type of backup data. But you do have additional options from AWS, including Amazon EFS, which is our elastic file system that's essentially an NFS-compatible storage target. So if your backup application, such as an Oracle RMAN or an SAP backend or MySQL dumps, or your backup application directly wants to write to an NFS target, EFS is there from Amazon as an alternative to S3 as a storage target if your backup application prefers to write to NFS. We also have FSX for Windows Server. This is going to be essentially a SMB or a CIFS compatible backup storage target for your applications such as Microsoft SQL Server that want to write to a SMB or a CIFS compatible Windows set of storage. And we'll be talking about kind of the differences between these three here today, but those are the three that we wanted to kind of cover with you and how the data can get directly either to those storage types or if there needs to be a storage gateway in the middle. So let's go ahead and talk our way through each one of these, starting with Amazon S3 and Amazon S3 Glacier and Glacier Deep Archive. Now, when we look at Amazon S3, we're talking about a different magnitude of storage infrastructure to store your backups on. Amazon S3 operates at incredible scale, and you can see over the last several years just how many customers are trusting S3 with their data. You can see that hockey stick growth here where the number of objects is going into the trillions, the number of exabytes stored continues to rise for S3, and we regularly peak at requests per second and process over 60 terabits per second in a single day in a single region. These could be restore requests or backup requests where we're sending data to S3. And so when you think about S3, it can really work for almost any type of data, but it's particularly well suited to long-term backup data storage as well. That includes both S3 and S3 Glacier and S3 Glacier Deep Archive. Now, this is a storage infrastructure that spans the globe. We're looking at 25 plus Amazon regions for AWS data centers, and you're looking at really having then 3 availability zones per AWS region. So it's a global infrastructure, it's available worldwide, and it's going to continue to grow with more and more regions. Now, when we look at some of the features that you get with Amazon S3 as a result of this capability, you've got the ability here to kind of look at these in different categories. We've got our reduced complexity, where you're not having to manage or maintain any of the storage, essentially almost unlimited scale. You have no physical tapes to manage any longer. Even if you want to send things in your backup data to Glacier Deep Archive, you're still not dealing with any of the tapes that you're having to put on trucks today. And then obviously we'll talk a little bit more about the availability that S3 provides you without any additional complexity that you have to deal with and manage. We'll also talk about the increased compliance here, where we're designed again for up to 11 nines of data durability, and then some of the other protection features that come along with S3 that are available for your backup software, such as object lock to make your backups immutable, backup encryption, SLA-based replication if you want to move that data between AWS data centers and AWS regions. And then if you want to have that backup data held for extended periods of time for legal holds, these are capabilities that we have today built into S3. And then on top of that, you're looking at a very different way of purchasing your backup storage going forward. Again, it's all pay as you go, pay for what you use. If you're using more, obviously your costs will increase, but you're not having to then keep paying that if you then expire that backup data and begin to need to shrink your backups to a smaller size, or if your retention needs change for your backups, you have the ability to then decrease your costs. And this is not something that you'll typically find in any on-premise backup appliance today. Those are all fixed costs typically. We'll talk a bit more about the costs here in a moment. But this is one of the main advantages. And then obviously the actual cost of the storage itself. Very different cost profiles for Amazon S3 versus your traditional backup storage appliances, including physical tape libraries that we'll talk more about here in a moment. So let's look at some of those costs. On the left-hand side, you can see for our on-premise backup storage, you're having to deal and pay for that data center space, the power, the cooling, the networking, the hardware, and the software maintenance as that backup storage appliance asset ages. How does it become upgraded? How does it become patched? How does it become life-cycled and replaced with then a newer version? The management costs that are involved in not just one backup appliance, but if you're replicating between 2 or 3, those costs then multiply. And those are costs that you have to pay for in terms of capital for those appliances, even if These are appliances that you plan to depreciate. There are then obviously upfront costs, even if you're on some sort of flexible payment option for your backup storage. There's typically an upfront cost that you have to prepay to acquire one of those backup appliances. And then the human costs that are involved to manage a growing fleet of those backup appliances. When we look at that, those are all essentially fixed sunk costs into what it's costing your organization to store your backups on premise in a traditional backup appliance or a traditional tape library. And then obviously as those assets age, how are you upgrading those and having to then replace those? Those are all costs that then lead to a much higher cost profile for storing your backups for any period of time, whether it's less than 30 days or if you're a regulated customer for a number of years, all the way out to essentially infinity. When you look at then to the right-hand side, as you move to something like an AWS storage for your backup, these are costs then that are essentially eliminated and removed. You're looking at only the cost of what you use. You pay for what you use and you pay as you go. So we have three essential cost vectors that are part of S3: data transfer, data request to take data out of S3, and then any retrieval costs if you move stuff of your backups into longer term archive storage, such as S3 Glacier or Glacier Deep Archive. We have a TCO calculator as well to help you look at hard numbers between what you have today on premise and what AWS can offer you for your backup storage modernization. Now, another exciting thing that we love to talk about is the cost reductions in the cost of storage itself. If you look at what AWS has done with Amazon S3 costs and the pricing from 2006 to 2019, it's over 80% lower. And we've reduced the cost pretty continuously, as you can see on the left-hand side, while on the right-hand side, we've continued to add new features, new functionality, and new storage classes that give you even more flexibility and options in how you want to pay for your backup storage. So the costs are getting lower, but the features and the capabilities are increasing. And that includes the availability as well. So many of our storage classes for S3, for example, they take your backups and then move those and copy those across multiple availability zones in a region. And an availability zone could have multiple data centers in it as well, all separated by geographic distances of miles. And this is something that is really important to understand about S3 in terms of the availability of the data. Other cloud providers have kind of tried to confuse the matter by calling a data center a region. And the reality is that the availability and durability of our standard and our regional data centers is better than what you would see from other cloud providers that call theirs multi-region storage. Now, to get this same type of availability for your on-premise backup storage appliances, you're looking at then having to have your backup server, you're writing your data to your current backup storage, which could be a backup appliance, or it could be a primary storage array, a NAS device, could be even be tape. But essentially, you're having to back up that data to a storage location that you have to procure, manage, set up, maintain, grow. And so as you want to have increased availability to match what you would get from AWS and Amazon S3 in particular, you're going to have to replicate that data then to a second backup appliance that you've had to procure, manage, set up, configure, and then obviously grow. So as the backup storage needs increase, this problem compounds itself. You're having to then add additional backup storage capacity at the primary location, and you're also then having to double that up. And after you replicate that data, that replication side is also going to need to grow as well. So this problem tends to compound itself pretty quickly, and this is why customers like yourself are looking for different options on their modernization journeys. And this is really what we wanted to talk about here today. So once that data reaches Amazon S3, we do have additional features then to integrate with your backup software to provide additional levels of protection, even beyond just the availability zones and the multiple copies that we're creating. And that includes the replication. If you want to replicate that data across Amazon's networks and AWS's global networks to a different region, now you've got your backup stored in two different regions, possibly in two different accounts. And that gives you an additional layer of security. You can also layer on protection for accidental deletes, and that would include bucket versioning to essentially version the files, as well as object lock to provide governance and compliance capabilities for your backup data. It's additional protection for compliance purposes if you want to make the data in your backups immutable. This is something that's key today in the world of ransomware attacks. So let's look at that here for a moment. When we look at object locking, your backup software will then integrate directly with this feature. You'd want to consult with your backup vendor to see how they support object lock, but you have different models here. And the one we're going to focus on is right in the middle. That's a compliance mode. And this is our most secure version of object lock, where we're storing it in a write once, read many format. And this really allows you then to have that extra level of security that the retention can't be modified, even with the AWS root account. If someone were to compromise that, it still requires that that data be kept through that retention period. You can optionally also put a legal hold separate from these compliance and governance mode locks to essentially have a floating window of a legal hold if you have any backups that need to be retained for legal purposes. So you've got three options here for how to set up your object lock with your backups on Amazon S3. This also then takes us to our next section here, where how do you get the backups that you have today on premise to AWS, whether it's to Amazon S3, to Amazon EFS, or FSX for Windows? Well, we've got a solution for that as well, and that's what we refer to as our AWS Storage Gateway. And he comes in several flavors: a file gateway, a volume gateway, and a tape gateway. The file gateway is going to be NFS and SMB CIFS based. The volume gateway is going to be block based for block storage. Many backup applications support backup to disk capabilities, and so the volume gateway can be there for that. If you also are using a tape library today, a physical tape library, we have a tape gateway. And that's the one we're going to kind of focus on here a little bit. And the reason for that is he is the simplest and easiest to essentially drop in and have instant compatibility with your backup application that you have today. So these are some of the backup applications that have tape library support today for physical tape libraries, and these are backup applications that are supported with the AWS Storage Gateway tape gateway. And if you're using these, you essentially now have the ability to do a drop-in replacement for your physical tape library, where your tape gateway from AWS can essentially now archive your tape-based backups to non-tape-based locations inside of Amazon S3. No tapes on trucks any longer. You'll now be able to archive that data to the Amazon S3 storage that we looked at here earlier, and all of the advantages of that, and then choose the type of storage class that you'd like to have available and use with your tape-based backups that are now being virtualized and sent to the cloud directly through the AWS Tape Gateway. And so that gives you the ability then to start eliminating things such that you're having to deal with in your data centers today, such as all of the space, power, and cooling for those tape libraries, the capital itself to buy the tapes, buy the tape libraries, maintain those, the software maintenance, the hardware maintenance, the tapes on a truck. If you're having to move those tapes off site, that now goes away because there are no longer any physical tapes to be moved and maintained and stored. Now you have then freed up human capital as well, where you have teams that are available now to do other things other than having to put tapes in boxes and tapes on trucks and manage tapes and boxes of tapes. That now can be replaced, and that obviously then changes what your opportunity costs are for having to spend those human costs on teams to manage physical tapes. That now can all go away, and you will use AWS storage, specifically S3 and the AWS Tape Gateway, to then virtualize your tapes. And we have customers that have gone through this, and they're seeing tremendous savings. So we have a customer here who's seen a 70% cost savings just per year in physical tape costs, in terms of the admin time, the tape library maintenance, the robotic tape library itself, the media, and then the offsite archive service. All of that then is eliminated when you move to Amazon S3 with the AWS Tape Gateway. So we've gone through the Tape Gateway, and we've looked at how we've moved that data now to AWS. Now we have the ability to look and see what other options we have for going directly to AWS storage. Your backup application, most modern backup applications today, can write directly to object storage or write directly to cloud storage without a gateway device required. So this is something you'd want to check with your backup vendors to see if they support, but most of them do today. And this then eliminates that tape gateway or any type of gateway where you now have the ability to use your backup application. And many of them provide native deduplication and compression and encryption capabilities where that data then is shrunk and compressed and deduplicated well before it's sent to Amazon S3, so that you have then the ability to shrink the backup and before it moves across the network, as well as then your storage costs for having to store that in S3. You then have the ability to backup and inside of your backup policies to send that data without a tape gateway device at all, and it just depends on what backup software you're using today. These are some of the storage competency partners that we have partnered with, and you can find a list of these here. I've got a link on the slide, but these are some of the partners that we've certified as storage competency partners. So take a look and talk with your backup vendor to see if they're listed here and if they have the ability to write directly to cloud storage such as Amazon S3. Now, when we look, we had two other storage options here in addition to S3 from Amazon. Let's take a look at each one of those. So Amazon EFS, that's going to be an NFS compatible storage location for your Oracle RMAN backups, your SAP backend backups, your MySQL dumps. Those can be written directly if your database, your application wants to write direct to NFS storage. This is an option for you to write directly to EFS for your backup data. FSX for Windows, same type of thing, but for Windows applications such as Microsoft SQL Server, SharePoint, Exchange. That it's going to depend on what your backup application is looking for. But EFS is going to be, again, fully compatible with NFS. It's fully managed, and it's essentially a large file system that you can then use to write your backups natively to. It's going to be highly reliable, cloud native, and it's going to be cost optimized versus storing that data perhaps that you're storing today on a physical NAS device. Now with the FSX for Windows version, you have the same sort of capabilities, but you also have the additional benefit of data deduplication that comes from Windows itself. And so if you're looking to store your backups from Microsoft SQL Server, perhaps they're a VDI stream or a VSS snapshot backup or file system backups, those can all go directly to FSX for Windows. Same type of cloud storage capability, cloud native, highly reliable, cost optimized, but for backup applications that are looking for a Windows-based storage location, FSX for Windows is a great choice there. So when we look at our goals, we're very close here to the end of the session. We just wanted to kind of wrap up here with some of our goals. These are essentially, think of it as a checklist. What are you looking to accomplish with your backup to cloud goals? Are you looking to modernize your backup strategy with your existing backup application? Are you looking to have your backups stored in two different locations? What does your offsite strategy for those backups look like? And how fast, what's your recovery time objective? Do you need that backup data back for fast recovery? Perhaps you need to have multiple copies and one of them kept locally for fast recovery. And that's something where the AWS Storage Gateway comes in for both file and volume-based capabilities if you want to keep a local backup there for fast recovery. And then what does it look like for your durability needs, your data resiliency needs, and your availability needs for your backups on that low-cost storage? How does that compare to what you have today? And then finally, one of the most critical questions that we want to really pose is when you are looking to store your backup somewhere, how safe and secure is that? Is it secure from unauthorized deletions? Is it secure from unauthorized re-encryptions from ransomware? And so when we look at those questions, we want to then start to really kind of build out a very prescriptive list here that we are using to then look at our options on our journey. And I think this is kind of a great way to kind of look at your goals on the left-hand side and your questions that then you have to ask to meet those goals on the right-hand side. And now you sort of have the ability to bring those two discussion points together, your goals and then the questions that you need to ask to meet those goals. And then finally, your modernizing of your backup for your on-premise backup capabilities is going to be a journey. So you want to look at that in stages. Do you need something today that's just drop-in compatibility with your existing backup software to eliminate physical tapes? AWS Storage Gateway, the tape gateway is the right solution there. And then as you look at your backup application itself, Look for backup applications that have that direct-to-cloud architecture where they can write directly to Amazon S3, Amazon EFS, Amazon FS6 for Windows. And now you can then further simplify your backup storage architecture as you kind of reach that midpoint of your modernization journey. And then finally, if you have applications that are natively running in the cloud or AWS services such as DynamoDB, Aurora, RDS, AWS Backup is there to help you complete that modernization journey where you're moving to then a fully managed backup as a service offering for those cloud native applications or those AWS services that we're looking at today. Now we have some related sessions to you if you want to check out more details specifically on things like AWS Backup. These are going to be additional sessions that I would highly encourage you to take a look at. These are all going to be there and available for you during this reInvent session. So thank you very much. Thanks for watching. Again, we thank you for your time and really appreciate you checking out this session. And my name is Peter Emming. I'm a product manager for S3, and I hope this helped you on your journey to modernize your on-premises backup infrastructure. Thank you. And don't forget your survey. Thank you.